I am so pleased to be joined by, I think, possibly the only priest in the world whose entire vocation is devoted to persecuted Christians, specifically persecuted Christians in the Middle East. However, looking around the West today, I almost have to wonder if his efforts would not be better spent in London than they are in Raqqa or Damascus. Father Benedict Kiely, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Michael, again, as always.
I'm only half joking about the persecution of Christians in the West. You've been to Iraq 9-10 times, something like that. You've done incredible work defending Christian populations in the ancestral homeland of Christians, and then also including Armenia and other places too. Now it seems like the persecution might be just as bad in London as it is in the Middle East.
There's a wonderful biography of Gregory the Great, St. Gregory the Great, by Sigrid Undset. And in this, she asks the question in a way, why, or he doesn't really ask the question, but why should we care about persecuted Christians in the Middle East? And even back there at the time of Gregory the Great, she writes that whenever the church was in trouble, it looked back to the early days, the cradle of Christianity. But now, I was talking to some friends in Syria just the other day who are so grateful for any help we can give them and are struggling. That ancient church, the Church of Pentecost, the Syrians were there, 2,000 years. And I was talking about what's going on in Europe, and they joked with me, well, maybe we'll have to come and help you soon. And I said, it's not really a joke, because at some point, but that's also why it's important, why we still, not for mercenary reasons, but why we help our brethren throughout the world, because at some point, getting closer, they may have to come and assist us, which is quite chilling in a way.
I heard, and I've heard of a number of these cases in the US and especially in the UK, that people are being arrested in the UK for praying silently outside of abortion killing centers.
They could be praying to win the lottery. They could be praying for their favorite soccer team or football team. But because they are praying about abortion, yes, they are being arrested. There are what are called buffer zones now. And this isn't, by the way, people holding banners. This isn't people shouting. People in total silence. The police approach them, ask them, what are you praying about? Are you praying about abortion? They tell the truth, and they are arrested. A man has just been convicted for praying silently about abortion. We hear that much used phrase, something is Orwellian, but is this not Orwellian? Absolutely extraordinary. Silent prayer, not in the Soviet Union, not in Iraq or Iran, in London, around London, England, etc. It makes me quite ashamed to be English, actually.
That's literally a thought crime. The crime exists entirely in one's thought. In the United States, we have a law called the FACE Act, which was pushed through by Bill Clinton. And in principle, the FACE Act merely outlaws blocking the entrance to an abortion clinic. And they even were clever about it, and they said you could also be prosecuted for blocking the entrance to a church. So they want, altars to Moloch, altars to God. They're putting them on equal footing. However, the FACE Act is never used to persecute the many people who vandalize churches and disrupt church services. It's only used to stop people from praying and demonstrating peacefully outside of abortion clinics. But at least for now in America, one has to be standing approximately in the way of a doorway or something like that. You at least need a flimsy excuse to arrest that person.
This gentleman who was just convicted even turned his back on the facility to make sure that there was no way you could call it intimidation of any kind, and yet he was still arrested. There is a wave now, I call it the bizarre marriage, a marriage made in hell between the Islamists, who, by the way, would never be arrested.
Of course.
You would never find an Islamist imam being arrested in England, but this marriage between the left and Islam, which is a very peculiar marriage, but it will also end up very badly for the left.
So how do you make sense of it then? I saw a video the other day of St. Greta Thunberg of the Blessed Sailboat. St. Greta has turned her attention away from global warming, her previous crusade, And in this video, she was wearing a Palestinian keffiyeh and accusing Germany of genocide for supporting Israel. Of all the reasons ever to accuse Germany of genocide, that was her argument.
That's the new clothing of choice.
It is very fashionable.
Yeah.
All of our universities, you see it. How did that happen?
You tell me, Michael. It's really it's obviously we've spoken about this before. The Jew hatred, which is anti-Semitism. There's nothing else. It's not. You can't be anti-Zionist anymore. Yeah. It is, but it's also very much linked now with the hatred of Christianity. We know that phrase. The Friday people, the Saturday people, the Sunday people. It will come, and it's increasing. And we learn, once again, from our brethren in the Middle East about what happens slowly but surely as for example, in Iraq, the Christians are always, any country where Islam is in the majority, Christians are always second-class citizens. Yeah. So we're looking more, I think, in the West, certainly in Europe, dimitude, Christians being second-class citizens. There'll be jobs that they can't do, a lot of jobs, in fact, now. In England, again, people are being prosecuted or told they can't wear crosses. It's really, I think a lot of the American audience might be quite shocked to think this is happening in England. Your original home, your original rulers, this is happening now.
I sometimes, when I look around America and I see things falling into total chaos and, they're transing kids and doing all sorts of craziness, I have this nostalgic longing. I say, should we just return to the old world? I don't know. But the old country's gone too.
Yes. Well, it's lost its center. That when the center has disappeared, which is Christianity, the foundation of Christianity, Europe, the foundation of Christianity. We remember our beloved St. John Paul II and Benedict saying, why is Christianity not in the European Constitution? The foundational role, and it was erased as though it just didn't happen. So nature abhors a vacuum. So what will fill the vacuum? The false religions, green religion, Greta's religion, but also the other religion of peace, which is filling Europe.
Which also has a green flag, by the way.
It does have a green.
That's coincidental.
It does.
I'm thinking of that flag, the banners, that the invading Muslim forces have flown on the many attempts to conquer the West. I think Battle of Tours, first time around, Battle of Poitiers, rebuffed by Charles Martel. The Battle of Lepanto, rebuffed by St. Pius V. We just had the anniversary of
Wonderful.
Then Battle of Vienna, largest cavalry charge in history. The Muslims trying to invade Europe, but they're rebuffed by John Sobieski.
Now it's come on in.
Now it's come on in. Now it's open the door. So what are we to do? Because when I hear these things, it's similar to hearing about how in America, tens of millions of foreign nationals are coming into the country and they don't have our culture and they don't speak our language. And you think, look, really nothing against you, but aren't we allowed to have a country? Aren't we allowed to have borders? And one has this sense of urgency that the hour is so late, it might already be too late, in fact, to do much of anything about it. Europe, no one has any kids. In the UK, no one has any kids. Even in America, no one has any kids. So you have this alliance of the left, the cultural left, and the business right to say, look, we need to import in all of these foreigners and to keep the GDP up. But then it turns out that the foreigners have a culture of their own, and so it creates all sorts of social discord. And it just doesn't seem as though there's anything to be done about it. So what do we do?
Well, there is. It's the responsibility of the church. We have to be very robust now. I don't want to come in and it would be lovely if I could come in and give you a very cheery fireside chat and we could leave happily. But we've got to be extremely serious, become very tight, strong Christians, again, good Catholics, have families, and be strong in our worship and our faith, and realize, as you said, the hour is late. We must be extremely strong now, because I don't want to necessarily say we have to go the Rod Dreher route of the Benedict option. However, he has a lot of good points. The church has, at almost the start of 2025, is navel-gazing at doing something called a synod on synodality, which is extremely strange, but yet we have the treasures of the faith to offer to the world. We're not trying to convert the world. Why aren't we trying to convert Islam, for a start? Why are we proclaiming Jesus Christ? Marvelous things are happening in the Middle East. I know from priests, bishops I know in Iraq, Syria, etc. Many Muslims are coming to Christ. Christ is appearing in dreams to people in the Middle East. Many thousands and thousands of people. They're being baptized, many of them secretly. But why are we not doing? We're almost being told not to convert people in the West. We must be robust, happy, strong Christians, Catholics again.
That is such a simple question that even I had sort of put out of my mind for too long, probably. It's so simple, it seems never to come up. Why aren't we trying to convert people? If we have a major cultural and religious conflict that's come up with this clash of civilizations, simply out of love, why aren't, if we believe that we've glimpsed something of the truth and that we get to practice the faith in the mystical body of Christ in the fullness of truth, why aren't we trying to bring that to other people?
Far be it from me to be controversial, but I would say I think a lot of our leaders don't really believe deep down. It's the sort of end of that era, almost post-Enlightened era, but now, thank God, there are younger people, younger priests, etc., who believe, young families who really believe. As you said, it's an act of love to want to draw people to Christ. Either Christ is the way, truth, and the life, one name under heaven by which we can be saved, or he isn't. And if he isn't, I think I'll go and become a Buddhist, because why not?
Seems kind of fun. So at least it doesn't seem to have a lot of requirements.
We must proclaim Christ to the point of martyrdom. Again, bringing it back to my ministry with the persecuted, it's been so impressive when I've been there and you see people who refuse to deny Christ when ISIS come into the room, into the village, and tell them to deny Christ. That is their wish. You must deny Christ and convert, and they will not do it to the point of martyrdom. We need a little bit of martyrdom in the West, not necessarily to the point of blood, but martyrdom in terms of courage, white martyrdom.
White martyrdom as opposed to red martyrdom.
Yes.
White martyrdom meaning maybe
standing up for your faith, being like this gentleman being arrested for silent prayer, being in a job where they say, a doctor, for example, or a pharmacist, well, unless you provide these drugs, etc., or unless you trans people, you will lose your job. Well, then you have to lose your job. It may sound tough, but that's what it means to be a Christian. It's been the way it's been for 2,000 years. Why should it be different now? There was never such a thing as easy Christianity, but we've imagined, perhaps, over a period of relative peace, that there is such a thing and there isn't such a thing.
There never was such a thing as easy Christianity. Even when people hear that you've traveled to the Middle East all these times during the height of ISIS, they think, wow, you're crazy. What are you doing over there? But then you have to think, well, hold on, who are you going to visit? If you're going there to visit the persecuted Christians, that means there are already Christians there who are withstanding the predations of ISIS and the other Islamic terrorists.
Well, that's why I think it's so important that we remember that they are there, they've always been there, and they should be there, because giving a little bit of money to help them to stay in their ancestral homelands gives us inspiration. They've been there from the beginning. People sometimes think, well, when did we bring the gospel to the Middle East? And sorry, it was 2,000 years ago they brought it to us.
Got the order of things
But they're
wrong.
there. They trace their roots. Home as well is so important for those people. We've lost that sense of home, but they tell stories right back almost to the time of the apostles. I spoke to a Syrian archbishop way back in 2014 when this was all happening, and that's what he said to me. He said, "We are the Church of Pentecost. We were there when the people thought the apostles were drunk because they were speaking all the different languages. We were there, the Syrians, the Mesopotamians, all the Elamites. We were there from the beginning. A Middle East without Christianity would be, the entire church would suffer. John Paul, if you remember, spoke about the two lungs of the church breathing, the east and the west. If you're walking around with one lung, yeah, you might survive, but there's something, you're not doing too well. The lung of the east feeds the lung of the west, and then we breathe together as one proper body, because Scripture tells us we're one body. And if we don't care about half our body, one day they may, I was told years ago by a priest, he said to me, when I was almost first there in Iraq, he said, "We will not forget those who helped us." And he said, "We will not forget those who did not help us." So that kind of started, in a way, my vocation, because I thought, well, I've got to help them somehow. It's only small, but it's such a joy. This couple I was talking to in Syria last week, he said, it's very small what's happening here, but it has a big impact. We give money to one family to start a business, 4 or 5 families of them being helped, and they stay, which is also a purely political thing. They don't migrate.
Right.
So they stay in their homeland and don't pour into the West. So it's a small, but it's very beautiful.
That's important. I mean, we live in time and space. We're incarnate creatures, and so if we allow the enemies of the church to just run us out of our ancestral homelands, that will, as you say, have long-reaching effects.
Well, and also they deny the actual presence of Christianity. We were thinking of Armenia,
right,
in Artsakh. What the Azerbaijanis are doing, they are literally erasing the memory of Christianity, which has been there for 2,000 years. They are destroying churches, blowing them up, blowing up the ancient crosses. In other words, Christians were never there. Well, of course they were there. What's that funny building that looks like a church from 1700 years ago?
Right.
But they're blowing them up to pretend that Christians were never there. And they did exactly the same in Iraq. I've seen it. In Iraq, ISIS dug Christian bodies up, from the graveyards to say, well, Christians were never there. There are no graveyards. Of course they were there, but they dug them up.
How can people help?
Thank you, Michael. We just send money to support small family businesses, a very small amount, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, goes directly, start a business, and they stay in their country. Nazarene.org with an S, as I've joked before, not with a Z, that's Mr. Glenn Beck,
yes,
but with an S.
Love Glenn, he's a great guy, but
good
this
man.
Organization, NASAREAN, for the spelling bee and for the persecuted Christians and for the faith. A really, really important organization, incredibly important work that you're doing, and an important subject that is getting zero media attention and has gotten zero media attention for decades. Father Kiely, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. You're one of the few that does draw the attention of the world to this.
Relatively small contribution that I could make, but in response to my small contribution, you should make a rather large contribution. So open up your wallets and go to Nazarene.org and support this really, really important work. Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Mike.